You turn the tap and water flows. Cold, clean, infinite. You flush the toilet without thinking. You take a 15-minute shower because you had a long day. Right now, this second, gallons of treated water are sitting in pressurized pipes beneath your street, waiting for you to need them. But let me ask you something. What happens when you turn that tap and nothing comes out? Not for an hour. Not for a day. What happens when it's been 72 hours and your neighbors are looking at each other differently? I'm going to tell you something most people don't want to hear. In every collapse scenario, EMP, pandemic, infrastructure failure, civil unrest, water is what turns ordinary people into threats within 72 hours. Not food, not medicine, not ammunition, water. Because you can rationalize hunger. You can wait on medical care. But dehydration doesn't negotiate. Here's the physics they don't teach you in high school biology. The human body is roughly 60% water by mass. You lose 2 to 3 liters every single day through breathing, sweating, and basic metabolic processes. That's just baseline. Add heat, stress, or physical activity, and those numbers double. After 3 days without water replacement, your organs start shutting down. Your brain swells. Your kidneys fail. You're dead. And here's what that means in practical terms. Let me paint you a picture. It's day 4 of the blackout. The city's water treatment plant has been offline since hour 12. The backup generators ran dry on day 2. Every faucet in every building is bone dry. The grocery stores were emptied of bottled water in the first 6 hours. And now you're standing in your kitchen looking at the half-gallon of tap water you filled before the power went out, doing math you've never had to do before. That's 128 ounces, divided by 3 people in your household, divided by a minimum of 64 ounces per person per day just to survive. Not thrive, survive. You've got enough water for maybe 18 hours if nobody exerts themselves, if nobody sweats, if nobody gets sick. Meanwhile, your neighbor 3 doors down has a swimming pool. 16,000 gallons of chlorinated water sitting in his backyard. He's thinking about that water. You're thinking about that water. The family 2 blocks over with 3 kids under 10 is thinking about that water. And here's the uncomfortable truth. There's no authority coming to mediate this. No police. No FEMA. No rules, except the ones you're willing to enforce. If you want to understand why water creates violence faster than any other resource scarcity, hit subscribe right now. Drop a comment with your water storage capacity. Let's get tactical. The reason water turns neighbors into enemies isn't just about biology, it's about psychology and proximity. Food can be hidden, ammunition can be concealed, medical supplies fit in a backpack. But water is heavy. 8 pounds per gallon. It takes up space. It's visible. And everyone knows where it is. Your neighbor sees you washing your hands. They hear your toilet flush. They watch you fill a pot to boil pasta. And they know with absolute certainty that you have water when they don't. That creates resentment faster than anything else in a collapse scenario because water need is immediate and obvious. Hungry people can wait a few days and rationalize their desperation. Thirsty people have hours, not days, before cognitive function starts deteriorating, before desperation overrides social conditioning. Here's what I know with absolute certainty. In the first 72 hours after water infrastructure fails, violence concentrates around 3 locations: public water sources, rivers, lakes, fountains, pools, private water storage, homes with visible tanks, businesses with backup supplies, and water distribution points, anywhere official aid might materialize. Those 3 zones become kill boxes, because that's where desperate people converge. That's where competition exceeds supply. That's where someone decides their family's survival matters more than your existence. Now let's talk about your actual water situation. Not what you think you have. What you actually have when the pipes run dry. Most people have functionally 0 stored water beyond what's in their hot water heater, maybe 40 to 50 gallons if it's a standard residential unit. That sounds like a lot until you run the numbers. 3 people, 1 gallon per person per day minimum. That's 3 gallons daily baseline. You've got 16 days if you're incredibly disciplined and nobody gets sick or injured. 16 days. And that's assuming you can access that water heater water, which requires knowing how to drain it without contaminating it. Most people don't. They'll break the valve, introduce bacteria, and give themselves dysentery, which causes catastrophic water loss through diarrhea. Congratulations, you just killed yourself with your own backup supply. The next category is bottled water. Be honest with yourself right now. How many cases do you actually have stored? Most households have between 0 and 2 cases. That's 6 to 12 gallons. 2 to 4 days for one person. Less than 2 days for a family. And that's the majority of the population's entire water reserve. Then there's the category most people never consider. Trapped water in your home's plumbing. Every toilet tank holds about 2 gallons. Every drain trap has a few ounces. Your dishwasher might have a gallon. Combined, you might extract another 5 to 10 gallons from a typical house if you know where to look. But here's the catch. That water is contaminated with biofilm, bacteria from the pipes, chemical residues from your plumbing. You have to purify it. And most people don't have the equipment or knowledge to do that safely. So let's add this up. 40 gallons in the water heater, 12 gallons in bottled water if you're above average, 10 gallons trapped in plumbing, 62 gallons total for a prepared household. That's 20 days for one person at minimal consumption, 7 days for a family of 3. 1 week before you're forced to leave your home or compete for external sources. 1 week. And 99% of your neighbors have less than that. Now here's where it gets exponentially worse because water isn't just for drinking. You need it for sanitation, for cooking, for wound care, for basic hygiene to prevent disease. The minimum survival requirement of 1 gallon per person per day doesn't include any of those functions. That's pure hydration only. To actually maintain health and prevent the diseases that kill people in collapse scenarios, cholera, typhoid, dysentery, you need 3 to 5 gallons per person per day. Suddenly, your 1 week supply becomes a 2-day supply. And that's the reality nobody wants to face. Water isn't just a resource, it's the resource. The one that determines whether you shelter in place or evacuate, whether you help your neighbor or defend against them, whether you survive the first month or become a statistic. Let me teach you something about water sources that most survival guides skip over. Natural water is almost never safe to drink untreated. Rivers, lakes, streams, even that picturesque mountain spring, all contaminated, with agricultural runoff carrying pesticides and fertilizers, with human and animal waste containing bacteria and parasites, with industrial pollutants that don't care about your water filter. Giardia, Cryptosporidium, E. coli, hepatitis A, cholera if you're unlucky. These pathogens survive in cold water for months. They resist basic filtration, and they'll turn your digestive system into a water evacuation mechanism that accelerates your dehydration and death. Drinking contaminated water because you're desperate doesn't solve your water problem. It compounds it catastrophically. But here's the tactical advantage most people miss. You don't need pristine water. You need purifiable water. And there's a hierarchy to water sources based on treatment difficulty. Clear running water from a protected source is grade A. Minimal sediment, lower pathogen load, easier to treat effectively. Stagnant water from ponds or puddles is grade C. Heavy sediment, high pathogen count, requires multiple treatment stages. Salt water is grade F unless you have distillation capacity, which you probably don't. Your first reconnaissance priority is identifying grade A sources within defensible distance of your position. Rivers, creeks, springs, storm water retention systems, swimming pools before the algae takes over. And here's what nobody tells you. You need to map at least 3 different sources, because everyone else is thinking about the obvious one. The river that runs through downtown will be contested territory within 48 hours. But that secondary creek 3 miles north that requires hiking through residential areas? That might be accessible for another week. Map every water source within a 5-mile radius of your home. Note the terrain. Note the access points. Note the choke points where you're vulnerable during collection. Note the sightlines where someone could observe you establishing a pattern. Because patterns get people killed. If you go to the same water source at the same time every 3 days, someone's going to be waiting for you on day 6. Now let's talk about storage, because this is where most people's plans fall apart. You can't store enough water for long-term survival in a typical home. The physics don't work. One person for 1 year at survival minimum requires 365 gallons. That's 3,000 pounds of water, 46 cubic feet, and that's just one person at 1 gallon per day. A family of 4 needs 1,400 gallons, 11,000 pounds, 184 cubic feet. Most residential floors aren't rated for that kind of concentrated load, so you have to distribute it. Spread those barrels across multiple rooms. Use your basement if you have one because concrete can handle the weight. But now you've created a new problem: visibility and security. Everyone who enters your home sees your water stockpile. Every delivery person, every repair technician, every neighbor who stops by before the collapse. And they remember. When the taps run dry and people are desperate, they remember who had barrels of water in their basement. This is the fundamental paradox of water storage. You need enough to survive, but having enough makes you a target. So you compartmentalize. You hide portions in multiple locations. You create decoy stockpiles of lesser value. You keep 10 gallons openly visible in a garage shelf, enough to look prepared but not enough to be the primary target. Meanwhile, you've got 50 gallons under a false floor in your basement, another 30 in the attic in containers that look like holiday decorations, 20 in a buried cache in your backyard. This sounds paranoid until it's day 7 and someone kicks in your front door looking for exactly what you hid. Then it sounds like survival. Let's talk about treatment technology because having water means nothing if you can't make it safe. There are 4 primary methods: boiling, chemical treatment, filtration, ultraviolet purification. Each has advantages. Each has limitations. And most people over-rely on one method when they need multiple. Boiling is reliable but resource-intensive. You need fuel. You need containers that can handle heat. You need 1 minute at rolling boil for most pathogens, 3 minutes if you're above elevation. That's a lot of propane or firewood over weeks and months. And boiling doesn't remove chemical contaminants or heavy metals. It kills biology. That's it. Chemical treatment with chlorine or iodine tablets is portable and shelf-stable. But it requires precise dosing based on water temperature and clarity. It takes 30 minutes minimum to be effective, and it tastes like pool water or medicine, which causes people to avoid drinking enough, which leads to dehydration anyway. Plus, iodine tablets have a shelf life. They degrade. That bottle you bought 5 years ago? Probably ineffective. Filtration is the tactical advantage. A quality ceramic or hollow fiber filter removes bacteria and protozoa mechanically. No fuel required. No waiting period. Pump, drink, done. But filters have limitations. They clog with sediment, which means you need to pre-filter turbid water through cloth or let it settle first. They don't remove viruses. Those are too small for most field filters. And they freeze, which cracks the ceramic and ruins the filter permanently. In winter, your $100 filter becomes worthless overnight if you don't protect it. UV purification is space-age tech. Shine a light, disrupt pathogen DNA, safe water in 90 seconds. Except it requires batteries, clear water to be effective, and a bulb that will eventually burn out. When that bulb dies, you have a paperweight. Here's the tactical formula. You need layered treatment capability, filters for daily high-volume use, boiling capacity for backup, chemical tablets for emergency mobile situations. And you need redundancy, multiple filters, backup fuel sources, spare tablets, because when your primary method fails, you don't get to order replacements on Amazon. Run the numbers on your filter capacity. Most quality camping filters are rated for 1,000 to 2,000 liters before replacement. That sounds like a lot. It's not. One person at 1 gallon per day uses 4 liters daily. That's 365 days from a 2,000-liter filter if you're only filtering drinking water. If you're filtering cooking water, washing water, any other use, you're down to 6 months. A family of 4 gets 3 months from a single filter element. And that's assuming relatively clean source water that doesn't accelerate clogging. You need multiple replacement filters staged, not just one backup. Multiple. And you need to know how to maintain them. Backflushing ceramic elements, cleaning carbon cores, recognizing when degradation compromises effectiveness. Because a filter that's lost effectiveness doesn't announce itself. You just start getting sick 3 days later and don't know why. Now let's talk about the part nobody wants to discuss. Defense. You've got water storage, you've got treatment capability. You're set for months, right? Wrong. Because your water isn't just yours anymore when the infrastructure fails. It belongs to whoever's willing to take it. And desperation makes people willing. Here's the calculation running through someone's head on day 5. Their kids are crying from thirst. Their spouse is showing signs of dehydration, headache, dizziness, dark urine. They know you have water because they saw you filling containers last week. They're looking at your house right now, doing math. Do you look armed? Do you look aware? Do you look like you'll defend that water or give it up? This is the moment people become threats, not because they're evil, because they're biological machines responding to immediate survival pressure. And you have to make a decision right now before that moment about how you're going to respond. Option 1, you fortify and defend. That means physical security, reinforced entry points, clear sight lines, defendable position. It means weapons and the willingness to use them. It means making it clear through your posture and preparation that taking your water will cost more than it's worth. This works if you're visibly prepared, clearly capable, and willing to enforce boundaries. But here's the dark truth about defense. You can't secure a suburban home against a determined group. Not solo, not long-term. You've got windows, you've got doors, you've got walls that won't stop rifle rounds. Someone who really wants your water will wait until you're asleep or distracted or away. They'll use fire, they'll use numbers, they'll use time. Which brings us to option 2, community defense. You pool resources with trusted neighbors. You establish shared security protocols. You create mutual benefit where defending each other's water supply becomes collective survival. This is exponentially more effective than solo defense because you have overlapping watch schedules, multiple defendable positions, combined resources. But, and here's where it gets complicated, community defense requires trust, and trust requires vetting. And vetting takes time you probably won't have. Do you know which of your neighbors will hold their position under pressure? Which ones will panic? Which ones will decide their family matters more than the collective agreement? You're gambling your survival on people whose crisis response you've never seen. Option 3 is the one most people don't want to consider: mobility. You don't store enough water to outlast the collapse. You store enough to reach a better position. 2 weeks of water. Treatment capability. Intel on remote water sources, and a vehicle that can get you there. You're planning to evacuate before your neighborhood becomes a combat zone. This is actually the highest probability survival strategy for most people, because suburban homes aren't defensible long-term, because urban population density creates unsustainable competition for limited resources, because water sources within walking distance will be contested or depleted. You can't win a war of attrition in an indefensible position with finite supplies. You can only delay the inevitable, but mobility requires preparation that most people don't have. A vehicle with fuel reserves, a destination with confirmed water access, the physical capability to move quickly when stressed and undernourished, the mental flexibility to abandon your home and possessions, and the timing to leave before roads become impassable with refugees and checkpoints. Here's the formula nobody teaches you. Your water strategy isn't about storing enough to survive indefinitely. It's about storing enough to maintain decision-making capability while everyone else loses theirs. The person who's hydrated on day 7 can think clearly, can assess options, can move strategically. The person who's been rationing inadequate water for a week is cognitively impaired. They're making desperate, short-term decisions driven by immediate biological need. You maintain hydration, you maintain cognition, you maintain advantage. That's the principle. Let's talk about something most preppers get catastrophically wrong: community water management. Here's the scenario. You've got 100 gallons stored. Your neighbor has 20. The family across the street has 0 because they didn't prepare. It's day 10. The unprepared family approaches you asking for water. Not demanding, asking. 2 adults, 3 children under 8. They're thirsty. The kids are crying. What do? Here's the hard reality. If you give them water, they'll be back tomorrow, and the next day. And word spreads. Soon you have 5 families asking. Then 10. Your 100 gallons that would last you 60 days alone now lasts 6 days. You've helped people feel better temporarily while ensuring everyone dies eventually. Congratulations, your compassion killed your family and everyone you tried to help. If you refuse them, they know you have water. They know you're choosing your survival over their children's lives. That creates resentment, anger, desperation that might manifest as aggression. You've made enemies of neighbors who might have been allies, and they're still thirsty, which means they're still desperate, which means you're still at risk. This is the no-win scenario of resource scarcity. There's no right answer, only trade-offs that determine who lives and who doesn't, and you have to make that calculation before emotion clouds your judgment. before you're looking at crying children and making decisions based on guilt rather than strategic survival. Here's what I know works better than pure altruism or pure selfishness: transaction-based community. You don't give water, you trade it. Your neighbor provides security watch, you provide water. The family with medical training trades treatment for hydration. The person with mechanical skills maintains vehicles in exchange for access to your well or filtration system. Everyone contributes something. Everyone receives something. Nobody's a parasite. Nobody's a victim. This creates sustainable community where resources flow based on value provided. It's not compassionate. It's not morally comfortable, but it's functional. And functional beats compassionate when compassionate gets everyone killed. But here's the catch. This only works if you establish the framework before the crisis. After the collapse, people are too desperate to accept transactional models. They want immediate relief. They'll promise anything and deliver nothing because survival overrides social contracts. You need pre-crisis community agreements. You need to know who's prepared, who's skilled, who's trustworthy. You need to have these uncomfortable conversations now, while everyone still has water and can think clearly. Most people won't do this. They'll wait until the crisis to discover who their neighbors really are. And by then, it's too late to build trust or establish functional cooperation. Let's talk about long-term water sustainability, because everything I've described so far is short-term survival. 2 weeks. 2 months. Maybe 6 months if you're exceptionally well-prepared and ruthlessly disciplined. But what happens after that? When the stored water is exhausted, when the filters are clogged beyond recovery, when the chemical tablets are gone and the fuel for boiling is depleted? You need renewable water. That means rainfall collection. That means wells or springs. That means systems that capture and purify water indefinitely. And building those systems requires knowledge, materials, and time that most people don't invest until it's too late. A basic rainwater collection system is shockingly simple. Roof surface area times rainfall equals collectible water. 1,000 square feet of roof in an area with 30 inches of annual rainfall yields roughly 18,000 gallons per year. That's enough for one person at 3 gallons per day. For a family of 4, you need 4,000 square feet of collection surface or an area with higher rainfall. But collection is only step 1. You need storage tanks, food grade, opaque to prevent algae growth, protected from freezing. You need first flush diverters to remove initial contamination from the roof. You need filtration before the water enters storage. You need secondary filtration before consumption. And you need maintenance protocols because these systems fail through neglect, clogged gutters, degraded seals, contaminated tanks. Most critically, you need this installed before the collapse. Because after society breaks down, you can't order tanks online. You can't hire contractors. You can't access materials. What you have on day 1 is what you have forever. Wells are the gold standard, but they're location dependent. You either have groundwater at accessible depth or you don't. If you do, a manual well pump becomes your most valuable piece of equipment. No electricity, no fuel, just mechanical advantage and human effort to pull water from 30 or 50 or even 100 feet down. That's infinite water as long as the aquifer holds and the pump doesn't break. And that's the critical point: mechanical reliability. Electric pumps fail when power dies. Solar pumps fail when panels degrade, but a properly maintained manual pump can function for decades with basic maintenance. You need to know how to rebuild seals, how to clear blockages, how to maintain prime. This is knowledge you acquire now, not when the pump stops working and your family is thirsty. For most people, sustainable water means accepting a lower quality of life. It means rationing for hygiene. It means choosing between washing clothes or bodies. It means accepting that the abundance you've always known was temporary and exceptional, not normal and permanent. And here's the part nobody wants to acknowledge. Even with perfect preparation, luck matters. Your aquifer can run dry. Your collection area can be in a drought region. Your well can become contaminated. Your storage can be destroyed by violence or disaster. There's no such thing as absolute security. Only better odds. Better odds aren't guarantees. They're just better odds. Here's your choice right now. You can keep living like the water will flow forever, like infrastructure is permanent, like your neighbors won't become threats when their kids are dying of thirst. Or you can open a new tab right now and start mapping water sources within 5 miles of your position. You can calculate your household consumption and multiply by 90 days. You can price storage containers and treatment systems. You can research well installation or rainwater collection for your property. You can have uncomfortable conversations with your neighbors about cooperation agreements. 99% won't do this. They'll keep turning on the tap until it runs dry. Then they'll panic. Then they'll become part of the desperate mob competing for the same limited resources everyone else is fighting for. But you have a different option. You can be part of the 1% who maps their sources, stages their storage, builds their treatment capability, and establishes their community protocols before the crisis. And within that 1%, you can be part of the 0.1% who actually does it instead of just thinking about it. The difference between thinking and doing is survival. The difference between preparation and hope is whether your family has water on day 15 when everyone else is killing each other over swimming pools. Water isn't a resource. It's the resource, the one that determines everything else. Your security, your location, your relationships, your mortality. Get this right and you buy time. Get it wrong and you don't get a second chance. Class dismissed.